helped an elderly gentleman, an old family friend, clean out his root cellar. This is an old root cellar that has been in use for over 100 years and still was in use until very recently. And even though it is a little bit sad to have to get rid of a lot of this food, I think there's a lot of hope in it as well, and I want to share with you some of the videos and photos from that day. This family lived here for generations, and they truly knew what it meant to live off the land. Every fall, this root cellar would undoubtedly be filled to the brim with food for the winter. They had hundreds of jars of canned fruits and vegetables, crock jars filled with cooked pork covered in lard, fermented sauerkraut, hundreds of pounds of potatoes and onions. They knew that if they didn't produce it and they didn't preserve it, they wouldn't have much to eat for the winter. I have heard countless stories about the things they would preserve every year and the lengths they would go to make sure they had enough food for the winter. And it always leaves me feeling, one, completely in awe, and number two, really thankful for modern refrigeration. The reason the root cellar had to be cleaned out and a lot of the jars dumped is because the man living there, being in his 90s and having lost his wife just a few years prior, could no longer stay there, especially over the winter. It just wasn't safe. And being that it was an old farmhouse, the way it was set up is that the root cellar is directly below the house. And since there wouldn't be anyone living in the house for winter, there wouldn't be any heat. The root cellar would surely freeze, the jars would crack, and it would be a very big mess to clean up in the spring when it thawed. And as you may have noticed, a lot of these jars of food are quite old, some over 20 years old, maybe 30 or 40 years old, and no longer safe for consumption. So we brought them out to the woods and offered them up to any critters that might care to feast on them. After the food was dumped out, all the jars were rinsed. Primitively, I might add, because this old farmhouse doesn't have conventional running water. It has an old hand pump for a kitchen sink. The jars were then all brought back down to the root cellar to their rightful place, where they could be stored safely. This old farmer lived in the same house almost his entire life. For 90 years, he's been here putting up food in this root cellar every single year. His preserving skills are pretty incredible. And what an amazing way to go through life, knowing so much homegrown food that was certainly preserved with a lot of love and a lot of heart. Even into his 90s, he was still putting up food every year, and I think that is so inspiring. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, I would love it if you could give it a thumbs up, and make sure to subscribe to my channel so that you are the first to know whenever a new video is posted.